TaskUs On Air presents CX+U.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to TaskUs On Air. I'm your host, Surekha Nagpal, Senior Director of Financial Crime and Risk. Today's podcast is focused on Know Your Customer, KYC, as you would all know. All of us have gone through the KYC process as a customer when we want to sign up with a new bank, a fintech, a gaming platform, etc., etc. We know the drill on our end, but what does it take for the company to ensure they are onboarding genuine users and not bad actors? It's an entire machinery that is put together to understand the profile of customers. So today, let's deep dive into some of the finer nuances of KYC and hear from the experts here. Would request the panelists to introduce themselves. Over to you, Marilu.
Marilu Jimenez, as Surekha was saying, I'm the president of FINCAdvisors. I've been in compliance for most of my career, and AML compliance, it's part of what I still do and advise companies on. So a pleasure to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pragya, and I'm the Global Head and Vice President of Financial Crime Compliance at TaskUs. I've been doing financial crime and compliance for 2 decades now. And in my role here at TaskUs, I lead the service line of the practice team.
So we have a wealth of knowledge in the room today, and I'm sure it's going to be a very engaging discussion. The first question is for you, Marilu. How do you think KYC has evolved over the years for financial institutions and, in fact, other verticals as well?
So, I mean, it's a good question. And Prabha was saying that she has been in AML for 20 years. I have been a little bit more than that, and I do not want to age myself. But KYC, when I started, first, there was no US Patriot Act. So the customer would come in, give their information, and I had, and you're gonna laugh at this, but I had someone in my staff who would do negative news looking at the paper. So they would go with the newspaper and look at negative news of our prospective customers through a real paper that I'm not even sure that comes up anymore. So from there, I think, I mean, the world has moved a lot. And one of the most important areas of a customer due diligence is actually trying to identify that customer properly and making sure that the person that says that he is that person is really that person. So what we've seen through the years is biometrics. And even the government, Homeland Security, is using biometrics, which gives the user the unique physical characteristics, such as fingerprints that can be used, or a picture of the face to identify that person. So from that paper time that we saw many years ago, now there's a lot of very good technology that can be used to identify that customer digitally.
Pragya, the next question is for you. What do you mean by perpetual KYC, and why do you think it is important in today's world?
So perpetual KYC, which is also known as, continuous KYC or event-driven KYC or dynamic KYC, is based on the dynamic refresh of our customer data in response to certain key triggering events. It is also seen by many financial institutions nowadays as the solution to ensure continuous compliance and risk management when it comes to KYC and KYB. So like Marilu mentioned, back in the day, we didn't have any digital platforms. We were still using physical files, phone calls, faxes, and email to gather all the information and the documentation that was needed. And onboarding was done at a period of 3 to 5 year refresh cycle based on the risk rating of the customer, right? But with the coming of new technology, content, and third-party services, we've been empowered to conduct ongoing KYC checks, review clients based on their behavior, and any changes that we see rather than going on a fixed time schedule of 3 to 5 years, right? So this running process is essentially perpetual KYC. And what it does enable financial institutions to look at all of their clients and confidently say whether they're continuously compliant or not.
So Marilu, the question is for you. What are the things that a company needs to look out for in a KYC technology solution as they're evaluating changing their current technology or moving to a new technology-based solution?
So I've been working a lot with a new de novo bank in Puerto Rico that is a digital bank. So one of the things that we were looking at is precisely what is the best tools out there. And I mean, I would say any tool that manages the entire spectrum of the due diligence process, a tool that centralizes the entire life cycle of KYC, starting from onboarding. And I think what Prabha was saying to the ongoing review process is what you're looking for. The problem with it's that there's a lot out there, but it's costly. It costs by customer, I mean, by the type of review that is being conducted. So it's something that has to be looked at very detailed. And I would advise anyone that is looking for these alternatives to talk to your regulator and make sure that you have all the phases of the managing of the customer very well detailed and documented, so that when your regulator comes in, you can be able to explain what the tool is doing. If you don't understand what the tool is doing, then you cannot explain it to the regulator. So that's from a practical perspective, something that has to be done. So the solution has to be able to integrate easily. That's another area to be looked for. If it integrates with your core and provide flexibility and customization. So user-friendly is super important.
I totally agree with points that you shared. Flexibility, integration, user interface, how important it is that the company understands the solution. All those are very, very key aspects that need to be looked at when a company is evaluating a technology solution. Pragya, the next question is for you. As we all know, GenAI is the buzzword today. GenAI systems can revolutionize effectiveness and efficiency of financial crime detection and prevention efforts. Do you think AI alone can now solve the deepfake challenge that we are experiencing in KYC?
Sure, Surekha, I think a very important question to address. So deepfakes are super realistic fake media, like changed images, changed videos, or voice recordings that can be used to pretend to be real people. And bad actors can use deepfakes to get around KYC checks in many different ways, like video verification spoofing. Deepfake videos can copy how a person looks and moves during KYC checks as well, right? However, fighting this level of intelligent fraud can be achieved only by using intelligent technologies applied across the layers of human interaction and payment systems as well. So the detection and prevention of challenging deepfake KYC must use an integrated view of financial crime, which is not alone technology. As regulated institutions move forward, the call to action is very clear, that we embrace the human over the loop AI framework, not merely, as a tool, but as a philosophy as well. So adopting a high-performing, fully automated IDV solution is definitely key to reduce the manual costs and the effort and processing times, but it must be adopted with the human touch and without losing that altogether, where, trained people can dig deeper into suspicious activities, suspicious cases, apply their own thinking hats to look for suspicious patterns, for small nuances, and also use their analytical ability to make the final decisions.
Thank you, Pragya, for the validation. It was reassuring to know that AI still needs human expertise and humans still sort of hold the remote control in their hands. And the hybrid approach is what really succeeds. So far, we've talked about evolution of KYC and the role of technology in this evolution. It's time to talk a little bit about the regulations and how the regulations have kept pace with the needs of the industry. So Marilu, this question is for you. With the implementation of the AMLA Act 2020, how will the reporting requirements for financial institutions change?
I think that the industry is waiting anxiously for FinCEN to finalize their mandate. In FinCEN's mandate requires that an estimated 30 million corporations report beneficial ownership information to this new registry that was already created. So that's the first phase. The registry was created and the due date was January of this year, January 1st, 2024. What does that mean? That companies that are created after January 2024 have to register in the registry 90 days after creation. I think something that FinCEN has done well and the industry should be grateful for is that there's a lot of guidance out there, and they came up with this pamphlet which is called An Introduction to Beneficial Ownership Information Reporting, and it provides who has to report, who does not have to report, because there's a lot of entities that do not have to report, and when to report, to expect in terms of the whole rule.
Thank you, Marilu, for talking through some of these aspects. I know there's ambiguity around it by financial institutions going forward on some of these aspects. The next question on similar lines is for you, Pragya. Do you think it's possible going forward to achieve standardization in KYC compliance? And why have existing efforts not gained much traction so far?
So when you say standardization, right, and KYC compliance specifically, what comes to mind is a utility model, right, or like a common database, as we call it, which will allow customers to give their information once, irrespective of counterparties or beneficial owners. And what it will do is validate that information once for all banks or other financial institutions that want to consume that information. In other words, an enormous saving of time, cost, and frustrating conversations that banks and financial institutions have with their customers for repeatedly asking for documentation and information. Now, there are two ways, I think, of achieving this. One is through a centralized database or a centralized utility, and one is through a decentralized one. So a centralized one is essentially a hub and spoke model where an entity or a provider is created or employed, and their sole function is to collect and validate the customer information. So a new client that is potentially being onboarded to a bank or to an ecosystem can provide their data for validation to this centralized model or the entity. And once validated, they can share the data with any financial institution in that ecosystem. And any updates are done again with the centralized database or utility, which subsequently is shared with financial institutions that have agreed or been granted access to that. So that is the centralized approach. And the second approach is the decentralized one, which is there's a network that's created between financial institutions that share validated customer data between them on the request of the client. So for example, if customer A onboards a bank A, then that bank creates a KYC file for them. If they want to onboard bank B, then they push that newly created file to bank B, which now receives the customer data as it did previously, but also accompanied by the validation stamp of bank A. So essentially, banks or financial institutions provide validation services to each other instead of a middleman or a middle validator providing that service to them. But while this model is ideal and we would all love to have it, right, saves us time, hassle, difficult conversations, everything, it hasn't seen a lot of success due to various reasons like implementation costs, complexities, monetization potential, data security, business continuity, etc. However, the fact that standardization by way of a database or utility or other models requires a lot of effort in terms of design and governance thinking. And that shift is how KYC will need to be approached. And it does not negate that it's going to be vastly beneficial from an operational, monetary, and regulatory benefit standpoint. So definitely a huge potential there, but of course it has its own restrictions as well.
I think we've talked a lot on KYC today. We've talked about evolution, technology, regulations, what has happened so far, what's going to happen in the future, what are the next steps, what are the challenges. I think it was a very, very insightful discussion today. A big thank you to our panelists, Marilu and Pragya, for taking out time for this conversation. It was very enriching, and I'm sure our listeners enjoyed the conversation as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to the episode of TaskUs on Air. I hope, as I said earlier, you enjoyed this and now have a better appreciation of what it takes to run an effective Know Your Customer program. If you enjoyed this episode, do follow us on Spotify to catch the future ones. You can also discover more about TaskUs by visiting our website, taskus.com, and following us on our social channels on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you once again for joining in.